Right then, so this is another one of my videos which I'm doing on fuel economy, and it's what I refer to basically as kind of real world fuel economy. The reason I'm doing it is a couple of reasons. One is a little bit bored, sat around whilst we're in the middle of another lockdown, so it gives me another opportunity to do them on cars that I haven't done previously, but also actually to answer a few questions that I get asked regularly by customers, because we sell a lot of these cars, about fuel economy, what you should expect to get for them from the car and how to get that economy really. So in this video I'm doing it on a Honda CR-V. It's a 1.6 SR version. They do two 1.6 litre engines in the CR-Vs. They do the higher horsepower ones with the four-wheel drive cars and the lower horsepower ones with two-wheel drive, and this is the lower horsepower one. So these will give better fuel economy than the higher horsepower ones, quite clearly. So the reason I'm doing it is basically, as I said, normally the fuel economy figures come from a couple of sources. One is from the manufacturers themselves, and as we know, their claims can be optimistic to say the least. But also from the motoring press, and also from official MPG figures that are supplied by independent people. The reason I have kind of doubts about fuel economy and the figures you get given is very simply that, as we've found, Volkswagen found out that the problem is putting a car in an artificial environment on a rolling road with no undulations going up or down. There's no wind. It's a false figure that you get, which is always higher than you realistically can achieve. The other one is from the motoring press, and it basically shocks me that still in this day and age they can't work out that when they get into individual cars, certain cars will be driven in a certain manner. If you drive if you do a road test on a Ferrari, for sake of argument, you're not going to expect to get very good fuel economy. You expect the cars to be driven hard. So obviously that's going to be then a reflection of how they will drive. However, if you buy a car like a diesel, most people that buy them, especially a family car, will drive them in a manner befitting the reason they bought the car, and that will be things like they'll have bought it for fuel economy and reliability, so they're not going to be absolutely hammering the car the whole time. So what I'm going to try and do on this video is kind of mimic how I believe people will drive the car, without being overly sensitive to it, but also driving how I encourage people to drive them. The only thing I will do, I will stick to the speed limits, because I think that's only fair on the manufacturer to do that. And obviously for legal reasons, but I'm not going to be going slower than the speed limits. I'm not going to be dawdling for to try and artificially manufacture higher fuel economy figures. The test drive route, for want of explanation, is basically from where we start to the motorway. It's actually slightly uphill, so the first part of the trip I expect to be not particularly good in terms of the economy the car gains. Then there'll be a section of motorway for probably about 10 miles or so, and then I'll be coming back down parallel to the motorway, down a main road, so to mix it up, an A road, and then back on the little B roads back to where we started from. So it's a real mix. However, obviously what that doesn't include is sort of city driving, and that brings me on my first point, just to get out of the way. If the car's going to be driven short trips in the city, stop-start traffic, you are not going to get anywhere near the manufacturer's claims for its average MPG. For one of these, I'd expect you, if you're just doing pure town driving, to be 40-ish to the gallon. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. It's all down to driving style. And also traffic conditions. So if I'm driving today, it's going to be quiet because we're locked down. I'd expect the economy to be better than on a much busier day where you might be queuing in traffic and that kind of thing. So before I get to I'm going to do it in 3 stops. When I get to the motorway, I'll give an update on the MPG I've got up to that point. Then I'll do it again at the end of the motorway trip, and then I'll do it right at the end of towards the end of the the main road. But in terms of how to drive a diesel car, now I'm not here to teach anyone how to drive, quite the opposite. But the important thing with diesels is, if you can, utilise the torque of the engine, not the power, the torque. And that basically means you change up relatively early, and in these it means changing up around about 2000 RPM. You've got a rev counter there, but also next to it you've got a little light that goes bing and says change up. It's actually very, very, very efficient to use that, and sometimes change up even before it, because the car can take me in very low revs, certainly from about 1500 RPM or just above, and you use the torque of the engine. And even now I'm doing 50 miles an hour, it's a 50 mile an hour limit, but if I put my foot down, the car picks up and goes, no fluffing or fluttering at all, absolutely fine. But also other things, looking ahead the whole time. Every time you hit the brake pedal on the car, you're basically wasting the energy that you used to get up to that speed in the first place. So trying to anticipate is always a good thing on any car, no matter how you drive them. But also smooth throttle applications, on and off the throttle, driving it like a petrol car is going to hurt the economy, definitely. I mean, I know it, so I've seen how it pans out. Another thing, of course, is if you're not getting the fuel economy, even by driving efficiently, or you suddenly notice a drop in fuel economy, there can be a whole host of reasons for that. The most common ones are very simply efficiency of the engine. So you'll have things like the phone's going. Air filter for the engine. If the engine's not breathing or can't get the air in, it won't be combusting efficiently. But more common than that, actually, just after a drive, if you've gone for a decent drive, if you get an opportunity, get out of the car. Be careful, don't burn your hand. Just put your hand on each of the four wheels and see if one of the wheels is warm or hot, even, because that could be basically a sticking brake. And if the brakes are sticking, then obviously driving with your brakes on is going to kill your economy, quite clearly. And it's surprising how often that actually crops up. But I would say the likelihood is it's very unlikely, but also it's very simple to fix normally. It's just the little sliders on the brake pads normally. I just need greasing up again. It's not a difficult job or expensive job to do, but that's rare. That's just as an aside. We're getting close to the motorway now. In fact, I'm going to be on it in just a few minutes, so I'm going to turn off the video. So my first section of the drive is actually slightly uphill for quite a long section of it, and it is worth pointing out again, it's a cold day. It's only 2 degrees. And I've started the car from cold, so I'd expect the first part to be not particularly efficient. We're currently at 45.1 miles per gallon. What I'll do, as I said, I'll stop it here and I'll update at the end of the motorway. Right then, so we're coming to the end of the motorway. I'm up to 14 miles now, and the MPG's risen, is up to 47.4 miles per gallon. Again, just coming back to kind of the motorway, this section, it's got a little bit of undulation, as you'd expect. There's a little bit of wind about. It's not the windiest of days, it's not the calmest of days, so again, it's probably quite a good representation of what you'd expect. So what I'll be doing now is just joining up on the A38 and coming back. I said it runs pretty much parallel to this, so it should be a good mix. There's a bit of roadworks on there. So hopefully it'll be again representative of what you'd expect on an A road, and then further down the A road I'll give an update, and then the final one when we get back to base, basically. Right then, so quick update. A bit further down the A38 now. We're up to 25 miles, or just underneath, and we're currently at 51.5 miles per gallon. Traffic's been a fair bit about, actually, which is surprising. A few little traffic lights and the like, which I'm about to come up to now. So yeah, it's quite a nice mix, actually. And what I'll do is give the final update in a few minutes' time when I'm back. And then so we're now coming towards the end of the video, just a mile or so to go, and then I'll give the update right at the end when we get there. But these are, in fairness to the CR-V, I mean, this is the same engine they use in the Civic, and in the Civic it is an amazingly efficient engine. What's nice about these, I think, is the fact that they're just a pleasant engine to use day in, day out. It's, it is a diesel, it's diesel, but it's quiet and it's refined, which is because the problem is you can go for great economy but have a horrible engine to use. It doesn't make for a lot of fun, or make it particularly relaxing when you're doing it. So, and as I said, the fact is that people will better this economy, but people will get worse. The most common thing I find is that people who've gone from petrol engine cars into diesels quite often find they don't get the economy that they may have been hoping to get, mostly because we all become kind of creatures of habit. We drive the cars in a particular way, whereas petrol engines want revs. They want you to keep your foot down for longer because they haven't got the torque. People, when they first drive them, find out, because I did, the very first diesel I ever had was an Accord diesel, and I was actually really disappointed because I was expecting to get 50-ish to the gallon out of the thing and was struggling to get 35, and I spoke to the Honda dealer and they said, well, I don't think there's going to be any problem with the car. They knew me well, I used to work for them, so they didn't pull any punches and said, look at yourself. Basically, the first thing to look at if you're not getting good economy is yourself, and how are you driving that car. And I suddenly did. I realised I've been driving petrol engines. I was constantly in a too lower gear because I knew that with a petrol engine you put your foot down and nothing would happen. I had to trust the fact that I could go up in a much higher gear at all times in the diesels. And yeah, very quickly within a week or so I was well at, up to the manufacturer's claims in that particular car. So yeah, I mean, I said aside from the mechanical things I mentioned earlier that to look for but that's normally if you see a drop in economy in the way after you've been driving and getting good economy up to that point. The initial part is really about how you drive the car yourself. So we're pretty much back now, and the final look, it tells me I have averaged over 27.8 miles, 53 miles per gallon exactly. So as I said, it is not scientific. It can be scoffed at, laughed at, ridiculed and dismissed, but it's what I got on that particular trip. If it's been of any help to anyone, that's absolutely fine and dandy.